Hello, LinkedIn makers and movers. Today on the show, we have a fearless CEO making waves on LinkedIn. And that's no surprise because she runs Hootsuite, one of the OG and still most popular B2B social media management platforms. And fun fact, Hootsuite was the first social tool I used back in my early marketing days. And I'm guessing that many listeners might be able to say the same. Please welcome Hootsuite CEO Irina Novoselsky to the LinkedIn Famous podcast. And before we hand her the mic, let's scroll her LinkedIn profile a little bit. She has a finance and tech pedigree. Early in her career, she held roles at Morgan Stanley and Apollo, the private equity firm. Then she leapt into B2B services and software. She became a CEO at 32 and led HR tech giant CareerBuilder through a major turnaround. And 2.5 years ago, she took the reins at Hootsuite to lead the company into a new era of innovation, empowering businesses to use social intelligence to enhance the customer experience, build genuine relationships, and drive meaningful business impact and revenue. Now, early on, she spotted a gap. Millions of B2B brands post on social, yet few tie those efforts to revenue and pipeline, which has become a major focus for the brand. She's also refocusing on Gen Z decision makers who crave authenticity over the hard sell. And true to those values, Irina is very active on LinkedIn, which is no small feat for a CEO of a 1,500-person company. And she does a lot of video, which, in my humble opinion, is the toughest type of content to pull off. The kind of video where you record for the camera. And anybody who's done that knows how hard it is, but it's paying off. Irina's mission is to turn social media into a predictable revenue engine, and her data backs it up. Here are some figures from Q1 of 2025 at Hootsuite. She racked up 10 million impressions on LinkedIn, and her presence influenced 37% of leads during the quarter. And per Gong data, her presence was mentioned on more sales calls in Q1 than all of 2024. So if that's not the definition of LinkedIn famous, I don't know what is. Let's give a warm welcome to Irina Novoselsky. Welcome to the LinkedIn Famous Podcast, the show where we get real about what it takes to build a personal brand on LinkedIn that gets real business results. We're talking about driving revenue from a personal LinkedIn profile by sharing real and authentic stories and points of view. I'm Brad Zomick, your host and the founder of Spectrumer, a personal brand consultancy that helps founders and executives get LinkedIn famous. Join me for unfiltered conversations from the trenches of LinkedIn. We'll meet CEOs, go-to-market executives, subject matter experts, and company employees with blockbuster LinkedIn results. We'll unpack strategy and leave you with tactical advice to grow your personal brand and demand for your company's products and services. All right, LinkedIn hustlers, it's time to level up.
Thank you, Brad. What an intro.
Well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your presence and opportunity to learn about your journey.
We're all here for the hat, Brad.
The hat is making waves on LinkedIn.
It is making such waves.
So is there anything about your background in particular that you want to double click on?
I think there's two things you said that highlight it for me, just kind of the fear a little bit associated with social media. I'm originally from Eastern Europe, and you just don't really share things, especially in a public forum like social media. That is just not the culture. And coming from private equity, especially in the finance world, you are just so thoughtful of what you put out there. And my leaning into social was not something that was just natural. I came with a lot of fear, and especially as a CEO, you're just so focused on protecting the brand, and you want to make sure you don't do anything to mess it up. And so it definitely was a little bit of training wheels to get out there and to do it. And once I started to see the benefit, it became a little infectious, and it kind of self-fulfilling prophecy took over. And then the second thing on the video, for me, English is a second language. You wouldn't be able to normally.
Oh, wow.
But it's really hard for me to write my thoughts. I'm a verbal communicator. And so video has just been this freedom for me because I can put what I'm thinking out into the universe in one take, one audio, one video, and then I can go write the post after. And it's honestly changed the volume of content I could put out there, because before I was so much in my head of thinking, how does this sound? How do I write this? How do I edit it? And whether it's using ChatGPT or not, you're still so much in your head. And I've just found video liberating. And it depends. Each person learns differently. So some people might find video scary. Some might find writing liberating. But I think it just talks to finding your medium is so important.
That's quite the transformation, going from having stage fright to being comfortable with video. So kudos to you. I would love to know something about your background that the audience couldn't learn from your LinkedIn presence or your feed.
I am a latchkey kid. So I didn't realize this was a word, but because I grew up with refugee parents in a refugee home, they left for work at 6 in the morning, came home at 6 p.m. And from age 5, I was kind of just left alone, and you had to get up, eat, get yourself to school. And I remember thinking these kids that had parents that would drive them, I'm like, wait, this is an option. How does this work? And I think just having that self-reliance and independence was just so critical. And in my professional career, I really crave that. It's why I love building businesses. It's why I love going into transformative industries, the independence to go build something. Yeah, not having supervision is nice.
Yeah, that's a far cry from the way things happen today in the US. When I was a kid, we would ride bikes all day long, no parents around.
I did this in the US. Like,
Yeah.
this was in the US, but it just back then the option was that or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you can't even leave your kids alone. They'd lock you up.
And to be fair, Brad, they were scared of getting locked up then. I remember I had to fake and tell people, "Oh, my grandma's home." I had no grandparents. They died decades ago, right? And so I would very much try to keep that on the DL and not let anybody know that it was an empty house. So, but
Well, that's a cool story. And thank you for sharing that with us. I'd love to learn about the start of this path that you've taken. Now you're a powerhouse, known well and well known. And where did it all start?
data. I am a sucker for some good math and some data. And so I joined as a CEO of Hootsuite, and I started meeting with our team and looking at all of our research and understanding the product. And I met with probably 300 of our top customers. And one of the things I kept asking is, why are you on social? Why do you use social? How do you see the benefit of social? And one of the things that kept coming up is there were kind of three main reasons. One, they wanted to get their brand out there to the right person. Two, a lot of them were leveraging employee advocacy. One of the things they learned is that when a brand sells to a person, it's just not a great conversion as a person to person, right? We buy from humans, we form relationships with humans. And so in talking to customers, it became really apparent that they were using our tools to leverage their employee base to be advocates on behalf of their company and their brand. And then the other thing that kept coming out is just how important having, and you mentioned this earlier, Brad, but just it was a direct channel to their customers with no filter. They could communicate, they can form relationships. And as I was sitting in the seat and all these customers were telling me on why they were using Hootsuite, and these were mega Fortune 100, 500, 1,000 customers, I was sitting there thinking, okay, I don't think I can hide behind a title or behind kind of the safety of not being out there. And so I just kind of slowly started doing it. And I've talked to a lot of CEOs since then. And the way I started was what was comfortable for me, but I also made some mistakes and learned a lot of what not to do.
Yeah. What were some of those mistakes?
I think one of the things that's natural is you go out there and it's a little bit of propaganda, right? I started talking about the products we were launching. I was talking about all about Hootsuite. And, I don't know about you, but when's the last time you read a product review that you're like, yes, I can't wait to read this product review, right? Like, that's not normally a thought that goes through most people's brains. And it's also not how you would build a relationship if you were to go into a networking event or a cocktail party or like people you're trying to make friends with. If the first thing you did is say, hey, let me tell you about my product, let me tell you about my services, why the people's reaction would kind of be like, okay, I'm going to walk slowly away from Brad and try to get away from him as fast as possible. And I think the realization that I had is the same way that you build relationships in real life is how you build them on social. And so I started with how I build them in real life, which is around vulnerability and authenticity. And I want to learn from people. So when I'm talking to people and I learn something, I want to keep coming back. And so at Hootsuite, we call that giving 9 times before you take once. And so I completely changed what I talk about. And you'll very rarely find me talking about a product launch or a press release or an award or any of that kind of stuff. It's usually about things I've learned that I can share, questions I have that I want to learn, just things that allow me to build relationships with people, just changing it and making it digital.
And you mentioned that you're a data junkie. What was the delta between some of these more product-oriented posts versus,
Math.
yeah,
And it's massive. And it's funny. There's this saying, I don't remember, but the carpenter has the worst shoes or something, or the shoemaker has the worst shoes, right? And when I was meeting with all these customers, like we would be giving them that advice at Hootsuite. We would say, "Hey, don't do this. These posts perform the worst." We have all these analytics, so we would be feeding them these analytics to make their messaging more specific, their content better, so that they convert better. And yet, I thought, "Oh, I'm to be different. I don't need to follow these rules." And so the minute I started following our own rules and kind of, drinking our own champagne, whatever that the nicer version of that I think is, and the performance was just tenfold. I mean, I would have a few thousand people maybe look at one post, the impressions, to I started getting 20,000, 100,000, sometimes millions. And all of a sudden, slowly the conversations on Gong started changing, the customer conversations, the reach outs, the connections, it all slowly started changing as well.
that is amazing. So how do you approach your LinkedIn content today? You're a busy CEO, and as a CEO, you're also the chief problem solver. The buck stops with you. What sort of system or process is in place to keep the train on the tracks?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in two ways. I think in the beginning, when you're kind of scared of putting yourself out there, I had like almost like a child, like bullpen around me. You know what I mean? Like I had safety. I had like pads on my knees, pads on my elbows. Like, how do I protect myself? And that protection for me was anything I wanted to post, I'd write it and share it to the team, have them edit it first, have somebody review it first. And it's a little bit of a laborious process, but I would very, very rarely write it, think it, and just hit post. That was too scary for me. But after kind of 90 days of that, somebody checking my homework, I started getting more comfortable. I started getting a feel. And so I no longer needed that review cycle. So I think giving yourself a runway and some time to ramp into it and find your voice. I also experimented with different types of content and different types of things. Like one of the things that I really dislike is, and I've done it twice, and I'm probably hopefully never going to do it again, but I really don't like when the comments are congratulatory in nature, right? So I don't like putting something and people saying, "Oh, that's so inspirational," or "That's so amazing." To me, that's not my goal. I don't want to get the attention. What I want to get is people say, "Oh my God, I didn't know that fact," or "I learned this," or "You inspired me to do Y," right? And so, or "I learned X." And so I changed, not posting some of that stuff anymore, but I didn't know how I felt about it until I did it, right? And so a little bit of experimentation along the way. And then the third thing that I would say is I really got focused, and it's similar to, we talked about noise earlier in the conversation, and there's a lot of noise on social media. I think we have professional tools that help you cut down the noise to figure out how to target, but it's the same thing in your own career. If you want to grow in your career, you have to be really focused on who the right stakeholders are to allow you to make that move, right? To get in front of them so that you can earn the right at the table or get into the room. And so I think it's the same thing on social media. I really figured out, who am I talking to? And that took me a minute. And who do I want my message to get to? And for me, it's really kind of in three forms. One is, how do I encourage other CEOs to get out there and appreciate what the social media manager in this marketing function is doing for them on social, and the benefit that they can bring their team and the air cover they can give their team is one thing. I think the second thing that's really important to me is, whether it's the marketing function or the revenue function, but the broader go-to-market function, just highlight what do they need to be asking from their social media teams, from their marketing teams around social media, how it can help them. And so I post a lot of case studies of what's happening with the MBA and how they're gaining more visibility, or what's happening with these two merged hospitals, that on why and how they're using employee advocacy, on how Colliers is using employee advocacy. So how Visa is. So I'm constantly kind of talking through what is it that we're doing for other companies. And then third thing for me personally, I was a young CEO and I made some mistakes, and it was hard to be there by yourself. And I wish I had someone at that time be a mentor and a guide for me. And so where I can, some of my content is about leadership and management and giving people kind of the inside scoop that I wish I had.
Those are some amazing content pillars. And how do you plan that? There's a lot to draw from, right? And is it kind of fleshed out in advance or more spontaneous?
I think just having them is important to me. I went, the first 6 months, there were a little bit of different pillars. The second 6 months, we refined them a little bit more. At this point, I think they're getting more and more refined. And so I don't think it's as, oh, on Mondays, I'm going to do something around this, or on Tuesdays, I'm going to do this. For me, that at least that's too organized. But I just know that if these are the personas I'm talking about as I go through my day to day, which is also why video works for me, I'll come out of a dinner and I'll have a feeling. And normally the feeling will just sit and I won't do anything. But now I'll just take out a phone and I record it. Or I just went to Cannes last week and I got inspired by a few different people that I met. And all of a sudden, at the end of these conversations, I would just record it. And so for me, I joke with selfies because I take a lot of selfies, but I joke like you can always throw it away. It's free to take it. And so that freedom of just record it. If it doesn't work, you won't post it. And so what I've learned is just giving myself the freedom to record it and to memorialize it. And then the rest, I end up posting 90% of it, but that 10%, cool, I'll never post it.
That's funny you mentioned selfies. So people hate on the selfies, but at the end of the day, LinkedIn is a proxy for the water cooler or networking at an event. So that's why they work.
It's authentic, Brad. Like, I
Yeah.
think one of the things, and this, I don't know if this resonates with you and kind of your journey on LinkedIn Famous, but for me, I went from being really thoughtful of what I'm going to put out there, what words I use, like, is this buttoned up? Is that not buttoned up? And then I kind of got to the point where I don't have time for this. So it's just gotten to be extremely authentic and extremely vulnerable. And I don't have time to ask somebody to go take a picture, to stop what they're doing, like, who has the capacity to do this? Versus I can always just take my hand out and take a selfie and we can get it and go on. And so I think so much of it and it's what I think works on social is just the authenticity piece of it.
I agree with you 100%. How you handle engagement. Some of your posts have gone viral and you get a lot of comments. And do you reply to every comment? Or how do you address engagement?
Yeah.
Or are you engaging outside of your own posts as well?
Yeah, both. So just from a algorithm perspective, engagement is really what drives it. So if you never post anything, you can still get a lot of benefit on the social platforms by just commenting on other people's posts, which is a little known fact, but I think it is really critical. And so I spend a lot of my time commenting, whether it's on my post or other people's posts. And for me, I view it as I'm learning too. And so I see kind of the content that resonates. I see what the comments are about. It informs us. And it's a two-way dialogue. So I get the information on my own LinkedIn, our social media, and our data listening team. So the products that we sell out, we also use. And so they come in every month to my leadership team and they tell us what are customers saying about us, the positive, the negative, what are the themes that are coming around us, our competitors, our industry. What should we know? What's the sentiment? What's happening in one region versus another region? And so I have a ton of data, obviously, and tools just because of the world I operate in that my customers use too, but I leverage a lot of that. But I really like the commenting. I feel like it's what gives me a pulse on what's happening. And the analogy that I would draw is I think every CEO, every executive, every leader should be meeting with customers. And for me to meet with customers, somebody has to reach out to them. Somebody has to schedule it. We have to coordinate it. It takes on average 2 to 3 weeks for me to get in front of a customer. If I'm traveling, great. I get to maybe meet a few more because I can do back-to-backs. But it takes effort. It's logistic. Versus here, I can just engage. And I can't tell you how many conversations went from comments to DMs to phone calls. And I think the irony of what's happening is, and Gen Z already knows this, but most of Gen Z relationships actually start on digital and they bring it into real life. Versus I think older generations are so used to building an in real life relationship and, oh, it's so nice to see you on the digital world. So here I build it digitally and then I see them at a conference or I see them on a Zoom and then all of a sudden we feel like we know each other already.
That's amazing. And I bet with all that data that you have some pretty juicy comments and insightful ones. That's great.
Well, it also forms the next content stuff, right? I see the content, like it all just becomes a circular, self-informing loop.
The value of social media or the value of LinkedIn. And I'm kind of curious, as a CEO, how do you assess the value of LinkedIn, especially now at your company is messaging a link between social and revenue?
I think old me would have answered this differently. So pre-Hootsuite me, I'll go into that in a minute, but the data does speak volumes. It just doesn't come in an upfront predictable way on the data. But when I look at our top customers, and one customer is one of the number one insurance companies in the US, and they went from their broker signing 3 deals started and closed on social for month to 11, right? I have tons of those examples where people build relationships on social and then it drives business. One of our employees posted a case study on the MBA, and with no context, so nobody commented in the case study, nobody reached out on LinkedIn or on social in any way, but another NBA team saw it and said, we have the same problem. And within a week reached out, and it was a 5-figure deal that got done within a few weeks. And yet when you look at the analytics, technically they never even engaged with it. But because they were following it and watching it for weeks beforehand, they just reached out directly to that rep and said, hey, let's chat. And so for me, I see very similar things because I've seen it with our customers and the success from that for so long. But like one of the things that we started monitoring is how often do customers talk about our LinkedIn? How many leads come or a reference from our LinkedIn? And so based just on the impressions and the engagement, because I see who's interacting with my comments and who's the most engaged, we have about 40% of our incoming pipe is coming from, or in some ways coming from, my LinkedIn content. And you mentioned this in the beginning, but Q1 alone of 25, my LinkedIn presence has been mentioned more than 2024 combined. And so can you say it's exactly the reason we win? No, but it's like everything else. You get comfortable with seeing things. Like we're humans. If you see it 7, 8, 10 times, you're like, okay, I know what this person stands for. I know what the company stands for. It's a little bit of a warmer conversation, and it's air covered in my team.
Question about the attribution part of that. Historically, there's not often a smoking gun link. The UTMs don't pass through very well, whether you're doing organic or paid from LinkedIn. How are you finding that? Are customers like catching this kind of data in the wild anecdotally through conversations? They just do a good job of recording it in the CRM. You mentioned con calls, that's more integrated into CRM, but I'm kind of curious where the best spot to capture this is.
I think it depends on the business. I think B2C is much better at grabbing it because there is a direct action that you can take after a post. And so the data there is really visible, which I think is so funny because 2 things. One, humans are humans. And so I was talking to this B2B CEO and he said, Irene, this is great for a B2C business, but like my customers aren't on social media. And I'm like, okay, cool. Is your customer a human being? 5 billion people around the world are spending 3 hours a day on social. Your customers are there. I think what B2C has an advantage is that they can actually, to your point, follow a link all the way through. But that to me is just representative of what's happening in the B2B world. You just can't physically follow the link through, but human behavior is the same. There's no way that a human can buy in their personal life one way, but as a professional, they're entirely different. They're the same person. They're buying it the same way, especially with this new generation. The new generation doesn't want your cold calls, right? It's this generation of contradictions. They grow up with a phone in their pocket and they will do anything to not use it to talk to you. They don't want your cold emails. They don't want their cold calls. They don't want it. They want to self-service. They want to go on social and find it themselves. They want to research it themselves. They want to read the white papers, go to the forum, to people that they respect and make their own decisions. And so by the time now, and there's this crazy stat that like 84% of buyers, by the time they get on the phone with a person, Gen Z buyers, they already made their decision. And it's not because the salesperson has gotten that good at first call close. It's because they've done all this work that they've already determined who's on their day one list. And if you're not on there, by the time they pick up a phone to call you, you're already lost.
That's a fair point. It's funny, that stat that you mentioned, going back 10 years ago in marketing, it was at like 50 or 60%. So it's only moving further in the digital direction. People do other research before they buy. Awesome. And so getting to impact, you're tracking engagement. How often are you checking it? What are you looking for? Just on the top level metrics.
I check it every day. I probably spend about 30 minutes on LinkedIn on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. I do it a lot in between things when I'm traveling. A lot of my videos are in cabs or walking because that to me is kind of dead time. And so I can be productive in that time. I'm checking for a few things. I'm able to see which of our customers is interacting the most with certain posts and certain conversation topics. So it allows me to build a little bit better relationships. It allows for my team to understand and listen to what our customers are engaging with. So again, we use our own tools. And if somebody has a certain customer that they're building a relationship with and they can see the content that they're engaging with me, they'll reach out and say, hey, I saw you engage with Irina on some of the stuff that she was talking about, our social media GPT. Do you want me to give you a demo? Or, hey, I saw you engage on Gen Z content. Here's some research we can send you. And so I think the team does a really good job of keeping some of that warm. But I am looking to see what resonated so that I know what else to kind of lean into. So if there are certain topics that really resonated, I'll lean more into those topics. And then I am all over the DMs, or at least I try to be. We did this thing that's, I think, pretty interesting is we ran some math to see what an average email open rate is. I mean, you know this, you come from like a long marketing background.
Yeah.
What's an average email rate that you think is good?
If I had to say this day and age, 20 to 30%.
Yeah, and I think that's really healthy, right? If you're getting that.
If you're getting north of that, it's fantastic.
Fantastic. But even 20, 30%, I think most people would be really happy with an email open rate of that. What do you think the DM open rate is?
100%.
Like 90+%. And so one of the things that we created and built for our customers, and a lot of it was us using the tool. So I don't have enough time to say, hey, if you want this Gen Z report, comment Gen Z. And then before we would go one-on-one and go put the report into every single DM of mine. And like my team would help me, but like it's an insanely manual task. And so now we literally, you comment it, it's automatic and it goes out of your DMs and it's a really high open rate and I can see who opens it. So.
And all of this you're doing in Hootsuite. It's funny, it's one of the first tools I used a long time ago, but back then it was more of a SMB tool, and I became more.
I love that. It's like the biggest misconception about us, and I'm okay with it. I think every single person I talk to is like, I remember I used that tool, and the SMB world helped build us up. I mean, we have a 50+% SEO market share. We have over 100,000 SMBs. It's the businesses that are, when you're frugal and you're scrappy, you go to the thing that works because you have to make it work. And so I have a lot of pride and that's how the company started. But the reality is the majority of our business is enterprise and most of our customers are thousands and thousands of employees. But I think that's a really amazing part of our history that we started in that way to be effective for those that needed to be everything in one role.
Today, do you still support SMBs? These LinkedIn tools are available for them to see who is engaging and quick access to communicate with them as well?
Some of them are, depending on kind of what it is that you're getting. Some of them are kind of lower or quicker, lower, smaller features of functionality, depending on what you need. Some of the SMBs don't need the variety and the in-depth listening capabilities that we're offering PepsiCo or whatever. And so I think it depends who and what your problem set is.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'll have to give it another look. It's been a while. So let's go move beyond the metric impact. What was unexpected coming out of your investment in LinkedIn, either positive or negative?
Two things. One, I would say is and this is going to be, of course, you would think it works, but I was surprised by how much and how little time you have to take to make it work. And the posting and the commenting. I think if you told me before I started this, I would have to basically make this my full-time job to make it worthwhile. And it's really not. I spend 20, 30 minutes, which I would have anyway. And it just goes back to the fact that there's such a small percent of content creators that are fueling 90+% of the content. And so when you are looking at kind of those numbers, you have such an outsized ability to have an impact. And the arbitrage in the system is really huge for people to get out there and post. And I didn't appreciate that it really would have the impact that it does. It's allowed us to get into multi-million-dollar RFPs. It's allowed us to retain multi-year business. It's gotten us into the right rooms, into the right conferences, the right speaking engagements. And it just honestly was a little surprising that it works. I think that the humanity of all of it, of building relationships, was a real thing. And sometimes you don't know going in what the benefit's going to be. And so I've just been continuously surprised by the benefit that it affords my team.
Yeah, it sounds like on a business level, the impact is unquestionable. What about on a personal level?
I made friends, Brandon. And I know that sounds silly, but I think the CEO role and I think leaders in general, it's a pretty lonely world sometimes because we have to make a lot of decisions. And if things are working, nobody's really escalating to tell their boss how well things are working. They're usually escalating when there's a problem of some sort. And so I've really just started interacting with certain CEOs that I really like and follow and engaging in their content. And we slowly kind of became friends. And it's funny how it's happened, and it happened very organically. And we took kind of our social relationship, and I've met in real life. I think Nick Mehta is one of those that I started stalking and following. And then we ended up having a meal together. Yamini from HubSpot is someone I've been following, Alina from Chili Piper. So a lot of these people that I would interact because I like their content and would comment and go back and forth when I would go visit the cities that they're from, I'd reach out and say, hey, I'm going to be in that city. And I think before social media, it'd be a little creepy. After social media, you kind of now built a rapport. You have a conversation. It's a much warmer, do you want to get together kind of thing. And so it's putting myself out there has allowed me to just have access to a lot of like-minded people.
That's amazing. All right. To wrap things up, we have a lightning round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I don't get energy from being around a ton of people, but I will turn on my extrovert energy. But if you were to tell me, do you want to go to a party where you know no one and socialize and network, or do you want to stay home and read a book? I will stay home and read a book.
That's funny. You really never know with LinkedIn. I guess what's cool about LinkedIn for the introverts is that you don't have to go anywhere.
I have a job where most people meet me, they think I'm 100% an extrovert, but it definitely takes energy for me.
What is a LinkedIn trend that you wish would go away?
Okay, this is like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get canceled for this, but I feel like posting without clothes on. So there's like, I'm seeing a lot of bathing suit and swimsuit. Like, I feel like that's better for Insta and Meta and go on Snapchat and do TikTok. I feel like LinkedIn is more of you're in this professional or pseudo professional environment. It kind of just throws my brain off a little bit of, whoa, I'm not prepared for this content here.
I'll agree with you there. I don't see a ton of it.
But when I see it, I'm like, okay.
We're moving into summer, so we might start seeing some more bathing suits. What advice would you give someone who wants to build their LinkedIn presence starting today?
I would try to make it as genuine as possible. I think the things that turn you off from a relationship is going to be what turns you off from your LinkedIn presence. So do you go to your friends and brag about awards? Do you go to your friends and brag about all the things that you're doing? Do you go to your friends to just constantly get the pat on the back? And so if you do, amazing that you have this many friends, but the reality is you probably don't. You want to come with an interesting topic. You want to teach them something. You want to be engaging. And so it's the same thing. What do you have an expertise in that you can give people some knowledge that you can share?
I like that take. Next question. If you were running LinkedIn for a day and on the product team, what was the first thing you would change?
Change. I don't know if I would change. I would probably enhance. It's just even more analytics and data. I think so much of what we do with Hootsuite and LinkedIn is give insight to that data and that analytics. It would just supercharge that even more.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make. There's a lot of tooling that connects into the API of LinkedIn to make it better, from analytics to even like managing the messages and whatnot. So and comments and
I think it helps everybody, right? Like the more analytics there is, like you're coming to our place so we can give you that analytics across any platform. But the more analytics you give us, the better insight we can give our customers too.
Exactly. And it's tough to get natively. What do you think is a big LinkedIn myth that people believe but isn't true?
I think the biggest one is you have to have a lot of followership to get reach. And I think that has been busted, where what I mean is you can have 100 followers and you put out good pieces of content, you can get millions of impressions on that. And equal to the same impressions as somebody who has millions of followership. And so I actually think it's much more of a stabilizer, an equalizer rather, than people realize, because I think one of the things that holds them back is, oh, it'll take me forever to build followership. It won't matter. Nobody will see what I'm posting. And I mean, the research has shown that's just false. You don't have to have followership to get your message out there. You have to have the right message targeted to the right audience.
Good message for everyone out there. Come on in. The water is warm. So you mentioned a couple of people that you follow and you learned from and actually became friends with. Is there anybody else out there that you think is just crushing it on LinkedIn that you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, like the obvious ones. I went to undergrad at NYU, so Scott Galloway.
Yes.
Is amazing. I love Gary Vaynerchuk. We share the same Soviet refugee roots, so big fan there. And I think what Alex Lieberman is doing with Morning Brew and Story Arb and how he's just out there experimenting is really fun to see. But there are so many great people doing some really creative things out there.
Yeah. It's the best place to learn about how to do better work. So that sadly is the end of our lightning round and time to wrap up. I really appreciate you joining us today. Is there anything exciting happening at Hootsuite that you'd like to share or anything personally?
Yeah, I mean, every day. I have a question for you before I share that. Who are kind of the 3 people that you follow?
So I'm a big Scott Galloway fan. I've been listening to the podcast for about 5 years. Carrot Swisher. So they're 2 of my favorites. I like Dave Gerhardt, founder brand, and from Exit 5. And increasingly in the last few months, I like to follow Dan Sanchez, who has this AI-driven marketer podcast.
Okay, I didn't know that one.
Yeah. I like many people, I'm trying to kind of figure out my way with AI, and I want to learn and upskill there.
Same. I'm building my Irina bot. I think for me, the things that's really exciting is I think we're sitting at this transformational point where Gen Z is coming in and they live on social. They don't Google things. They go to socials, just search. They go to social to make connections. They believe in authenticity, and they will buy from brands that are authentic. And so I think people that have viewed social as a job for the 22-year-old intern is going to be the brands that slowly die. And it's going to be the companies that lean in to realize that social is a key channel for customer acquisition, expansion, growth, engagement. Those are going to be the companies that really thrive. And so I'm really excited that we get to sit at the center of it.
That is such a great trend to call out. Things have changed so much in the last 10 years. Thank you for being generous with your time and insights.
It's been so much fun. I love what you're doing. I love seeing all of the podcasts everywhere. This hat is trending. I hope I earned the right for one of these.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, for those who might be living under a rock and who haven't had the pleasure of following Irina Novoselsky, go find her on LinkedIn. She is one of the up-and-comers. Actually, with 10 million impressions in a quarter, she's made it.
We're all up and coming, Brad.
But Irina is crushing it, and everybody should go follow her.
Thank you.
And until next time, let's stay connected.
Thank you, Brad. This has been great.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow Brad and Spectimer on LinkedIn for hot takes and tactical executive branding advice. For the readers in the audience, subscribe to LinkedIn Famous on Substack. And if you really loved this episode, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting platform of your choice. Until next time, stay bold, authentic, and keep on creating.